So happy to be here, Latricia, and thank you all for joining us to this conversation. It's going to be quick, but we hope to get out of what you're going to share with us. And I am delighted to be here. My name is Ana Maria Aristizabal. I am the founder of a new investment firm focused on edtech, and I have the great honor and privilege to become a friend of Latricia and get to know more about you in this conversation. So why don't we start with that, learning more about you and the Leading Girls program.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Latricia Barksdale, and I am the head of a new program called Lean In Girls. And I'll just share a little bit about myself and what drew me to lead up that program. So for the majority of my educational and professional career, I found myself in spaces where I was one of few people that looked like me. That started in early elementary school, being pulled out of classes into advanced courses where I was one of few black students. High school, I went to a magnet school for science and technology, again, one of few black students. And then even when I started my career, investment banking, I was one of few black women, one of few women in general. So I've spent a lot of time in spaces where there weren't a lot of people that looked like me, and that kind of led to questions about whether I really belonged in those spaces. I received implicit and explicit messages that I didn't, that regardless of my capabilities, accomplishments, like there was something about me and how I was showing up that just wasn't quite right. And I wouldn't describe myself as somebody who lacks confidence. I don't think people who know me would describe me as somebody who lacks confidence, but even I started to wonder if I was as smart as I thought I was, if my ideas were as good as I thought they were, just if I should even be there, if I had the capabilities to be a leader. And that's really what led me to be interested in working on Lean In Girls and launching this program. I was very well prepared that people might underestimate me or think I wasn't as capable because of my race, but I was not expecting people to have those thoughts about me because of my gender. I just wasn't. It just wasn't something I was prepared for or that anybody talked to me about. And it wasn't until later in life when I would talk to other women about their experiences. I said something in a meeting, a man said something, and then everybody was like, oh my God, yes. And you're like, did I not just say that? Yeah. Or, you know, a man shares an idea very excitedly, a woman does, and everybody's like, oh my God, she's so dramatic. And you're like, really? Because I feel like we just did the same thing. So talking to other women helped me realize there were these gendered stereotypes that were affecting how people experienced me. And the fact that we actually don't talk to girls about that, even though they're experiencing those similar things, starting at a very early age, starting in school, is the reason for our program. Our program aims to help girls see themselves as leaders in a world that tells them they're not. And that is what drew me to Lean In Girls.
And when preparing for this conversation, so much of what you shared resonated with my own experience. Like, we are both ex-investment bankers, have navigated many of the education spaces, but still have the same feeling. And the reason by which we wanted to, share Latricia's experience and the Lean In Girl program here is that all of us little girls and all of you who are parents, aunts, uncles to little girls, typically are being told, those girls, like, you can do anything that you want. But we knew that that was not entirely true. Like, we thought that, we were told that, but that was not enough. And not only was not enough, it was very problematic for many of us girls, because when many of the things that we wanted to do weren't becoming true and were materializing to us, we were starting to blame ourselves. And that's the big risk that girls face today, is that they become, like, they start to feel guilty for not getting to where they want to be. And that's why we wanted to have this conversation and hear more about what you are doing. So I think that the other piece that we are also seeing is that despite all of the great progress that we had, and we just finished the March month and like the Women Month and all of that, we are still not where we want to be. Like, we know that only 10% of the Fortune 500 companies are women. Only 13% of US billionaires are women. That only 7% of the large companies have a woman chair. And in the case of what I do, which is VC investing, like, only 3% of money goes to women-led funds. So there is a lot to be done. And I would love to hear from you, Latricia, some of that. Like, how are you thinking about that in the edtech space and in the education space?
Yeah, I think a lot of times people hear those stats, and we'll talk a little bit about people's theories about why that's true. But one thing people will point to is a pipeline problem. There's a pipeline issue. And the reality is, what you talked about in terms of how rare it is to see women in these leadership roles also applies in the education space. About 3/4 of K-12 teachers are women, and yet less than a quarter are superintendents. So that's not a pipeline issue. There's something else going on there. And when we think about the ed tech space, even with all of these women in the education workforce, only about 13% of ed tech founders and CEOs are women. So again, like, there's something going on that we're not really talking about.
And I think we both agree, and many of us agree, that we want to make sure that we are not, when it doesn't become newsworthy that a woman becomes a CEO or when a woman becomes a superintendent. And what are the things that we need to be doing and thinking to like change that and like don't celebrate when that happens. So I would love to hear from you, like based on the research that you are collecting, like what are some of the things people think when you would ask, like, are women less interested in STEM?
Yeah, not innately less interested in STEM. Early on, and I'm talking about early elementary, girls start getting messages about what they should be interested in and what they are good at or not good at. And even starting, like I said, in early elementary school, girls and boys actually internalize this idea that girls, for example, are not as good at math. And it starts then, and it just compounds over time. So it's not that girls are innately less interested. They're getting messages from the outside world that that's not something that's for them, and so they're becoming less interested.
And what about risk-taking? Like, are women like more risk-averse?
Not innately, more risk averse. Actually, studies show that girls and boys, when they're preschool age, are equally confident. So equally like confident in their abilities and what they might want to take on. And that actually starts to change in elementary school, where the confidence levels diverge for girls and boys. And then there is a huge drop for girls, not equally. Black and Latina girls are actually more confident. But there's a huge drop in confidence levels for girls at middle school. And so I like to say there's not a confidence gap. A lot of people talk about a confidence gap between girls and boys and men and women. What we're seeing is how girls are responding to what happens when they show up with confidence. And it's not about capabilities, because actually studies show that girls who are high performing are actually more risk averse than girls that are not as high performing. There's a higher fear of failure, more fear of failure. To translate that into terms that probably we can understand as adults and women, I think about it like, women, when we see a job description, if there are 10 qualifications, if we don't match at least 8, we're like, oh no, I can't apply for this, probably not, I see some heads nodding, probably not gonna get it, I don't have this experience. Whereas men might see 3 or 4 they check off later, oh yeah, this is for me, I can do this, right? So we hold ourselves to a higher standard, and that makes us more risk averse because we're worried about what might happen if we fail.
And you were just speaking to like speaking out and speaking up. And I am wondering, what have you found in the research about what are the risks that women and girls face when they speak out or they speak up?
Yeah. One of the main things that I talk to people about when I talk about the work that we do is the fact that a lot of women are aware, as I mentioned earlier, of the dynamics that are at play when we're in the workplace and just walking through life. You can just imagine there's like a mirror image, a different version of that playing out for girls at a younger age. So I think we have probably all experienced a woman being labeled aggressive or bossy or abrasive just because she's speaking up, speaking her mind. Girls are getting those messages too. half of girls say that they do not speak up or speak their mind because they're worried about not being liked. They're worried about somebody pushing back against what they have to say, and so they just don't. And so, again, this is why we feel like the work we're doing is so important. We're bringing awareness to the things girls are experiencing that we're not talking about in hopes that we can both prepare them for it and help them overcome it and navigate it.
And in my space, what I'm saying is like, until we have more women in power, women at the board, women as chairwomen, owning more assets, and like changing the paradigm to being the woman boss, we will still call them women being bossy just because of these like paradigms that we have. But I also know that there are many things that we can do, and I am curious like what you can share with the audience about like those specific things that we can do to ensure that we have more women CEOs, more women chairs, like more women bosses in the future.
Yeah. The way we think about it is a two-pronged approach. So the first is what I've been talking about, which is naming this for girls, naming what they're going to experience. I think, you know, as you spoke to at the beginning, a lot of times with all the best intentions, when we talk to girls, we're like, you can do it. You go, girl. You got it. Girl power. Yay, you know? But then they actually experience the world that's telling them something different. And so they begin to think there's something wrong with them. Like, why am I not able to do what I want to do? Why are people not regarding me as a leader, et cetera, et cetera? So I think the most empowering thing and protective thing that we can do for girls is to make them aware of what they're going to face so that they're prepared to navigate it. And so that's a big part of our program. We, you know, it's like age-appropriate real talk about what you're about to confront. So I think that's the first thing. And though we would love every girl to go through our program, that's something everybody can do. Like anyone that has a girl in their life can do that with the girl in their life. And then the second thing, of course, is we want to change the circumstances. Like we need to push back against the bias, the stereotypes that are limiting for girls. Like we as adults have to do that. We have to interrupt that. I think, you know, we talked about some of the things that girls face in school. You know, one example is girls are subject to performance bias. So, for example, in math, teachers will rate a girl as less proficient, less capable in math, even if she's performing at the same level as boys. She has to be perceived as working harder and be performing at the same level just to be seen as equally talented in math. That is not motivating for girls to stick with math.
The bar just keeps rising.
Yeah, and so, you know, there are things we all can be doing in our own lives and as we're interacting with girls and others, especially in the education space, to really check to see, are there ways that we are unconsciously perpetuating these things that get in girls' way? And I would say another thing is, you know, acknowledging the way girls are leading in everyday ways. The traditional archetype of leadership that's command and control, I tell people what to do, I make all the decisions, that doesn't resonate with girls. Girls want to lead in a way that's more collaborative. Girls want to lead in a way that's about getting to a common goal. And so when they see that this is the expectation of leadership, they say, I don't want to be a leader because I don't want to operate like that. That doesn't resonate for me. What we don't say is when a girl tells us that there was a kid sitting alone, you know, at a lunch table in the cafeteria, and they looked sad, they went over and sat with them or invited them to their table, that's leadership. But we're just saying, oh, you're nice, you're a good friend. That's leadership, right? And so I think we need to kind of redefine what leadership looks like in a way that feels more inclusive and feels like something that girls can see themselves in, to give them the confidence to show up as leaders and to see themselves as leaders.
So for the people who are here, like what will be an invitation of things they can do tomorrow or when they go back to their offices and they can implement either as parents, leaders, educators?
Yeah. You know, I've talked to a lot of people while I've been here telling them about Lean In Girls because we're a new program. And I would say every woman that I've spoken to about this has been like, oh my God, yes. either because they're thinking about their own experiences or they're seeing their daughter or their niece grow up and see how their confidence level has changed or how they've decided to, not pursue things they might be interested in. And so I think the best thing that everyone here can do is start having the conversation with girls and check in with them. Have these conversations. Are there things that you're not doing or saying because you're worried other people might not like that? What's something you're interested in doing, but you just haven't done it because you don't think you would be good at? You'd be surprised the answers that you get when you ask girls these questions. And so I think and also modeling what we want them to see. We should be talking to girls in our lives about the ways that we're leading, how we're showing up, and how we're supporting other women to lead, because girls need that. They need to be able to see themselves in leadership. So that's a concrete thing people can do. And another thing is, if you do work in or are part of an organization that supports girls and serves girls, of course we invite you to bring our curriculum. It's completely free to the girls in your organization, at your school. We've partnered with a lot of organizations, Girls Inc., KIP, some Girl Scout councils to bring our programming to their girls. And, we just want all girls to have access to the curriculum that we offer, because we do think that an important part of creating a different reality than what we're seeing right now is preparing girls for the world they're going to experience while we work to change it. We can talk about what we want to be true, but the reality is we're just not there yet. And so we're not doing the girls in our lives any favors by pretending that they're not going to confront these challenges.
Awesome. I would love to ask 2 questions for the audience. One, ask you, it's a call to action, to take note of one thing that you are going to be doing when you get back home, get back to your office, about what we've discussed today, even in your own home. And second, if anybody has questions or ideas of things that we can do as a collective to advance this agenda, I welcome it. Don't be shy. Anything you would like to either contribute to the conversation or anything you would like to ask, Latricia? Yes.
I like the way that I like the way you discussed how girls kind of demonstrate leadership in different ways. And I think that that's something we could really work on in our schools to really tell a young girl that you are being a leader by doing that. You're not just being a good friend.
So my name is Reena Gupta, and I'll add 2 things from 2 perspectives. So one is I run a foundation called Mom Relaunch to help women who are on a career break. And we go back and tell them, be the role model for your kids, and especially for your daughters, because you can't tell your daughters to go and have a career when you can't balance and have all those things yourself. So that has been very, very motivating for moms to come back and be the role models for their kids. Secondly, I teach entrepreneurship to high school students, and we are hosting a global conference, and we would love to know how to motivate and inspire young girls, especially from all ethnicities and demographics. We don't see as many participation from entrepreneurship perspective from girls. If I have a batch of 10, I will have 6 or 7 boys and 3 girls. So what can we do to change the entrepreneurial mindset? Because I think girls have a lot more opportunities in terms of thinking and growing that, so that the data that she said from 3% can be 70%.
Yeah, I think your question about what can we do to have girls be thinking more about entrepreneurship really goes back to what I was saying about girls being willing to take positive risks, right? And I think what we can do, one of the things that we talk to girls about in our sessions is the idea of reframing failure. So And I think a lot of us can benefit from that. But, you know, not just thinking about I did something and then it didn't go well, and so, oh my God, I'm horrible. But I did something, it didn't go the way I expected. What did I learn from it? I got something from it, something that I'm gonna be able to use moving forward. So I think, how do we help change the way that girls are thinking about taking risks to make them more likely to do so?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank y'all. That's our time.